This is The Slow Dive. I am your host, your guide on this journey, Farida. Thank you for joining me today. Today's topic is going to be self-compassion in uncertain times. Now, before we dive into that, I'm going to remind you how unique you are. Your life, your lived-in experience, who you are, your set of parents, your family of origin, all your tests and trials, your challenges, all the stuff you've overcome is unique to you. There is no one like you, I assure you. So that's why I want you to take some of what we talk about today and apply it to how it works for you. I felt called to talk about self-compassion because, personally speaking, in life, you just come across unexpected teachers at unexpected times when you really do need them. And unexpected teachers, to me, basically goes into the big space of books, mentors, guides, teachers, therapists, community friends, anyone that gives you a little bit of knowledge that you kind of needed to piece together for yourself a better understanding of where you are in life. And what do I mean by better understanding? Perhaps you went through something pivotal in life, a huge transition, whether it's divorce, a marriage ending, a relationship ending, financial crisis, whatever, you name it, you went through it. Collectively, here on this planet, as you know, there is a lot of suffering and there's a lot of conflict and a lot of awful things happening. So I think all of us could use some self-compassion, and all of us might be at a turning point in our life where we're trying to seek understanding of why we are where we are and how did we get here. And at least for myself as a seeker, staying in that inquisitive state and trying to understand helps me have a little bit more self-compassion for myself. So back to our mission of this podcast in general is to listen, reflect, and connect. So today, my hope is that something I say or share might hold true for you, may inspire you to have more self-compassion for yourself or someone else in your life. So let's get into it. Our first segment in our self-compassion series is give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. What does that mean? Okay. You're a sovereign being. You're a human being. Give yourself permission to stop something that's not working, to start something again after you failed, to rebuild something, to let go of something, build a new dream. Give yourself permission. I think that ties into self-compassion because a lot of us feel, many of us feel, perhaps you have felt that because you set out to do something, you're going to follow through even after it's not connecting with you anymore. This is a tool for me because I am not a quitter. But on the other side of not being a quitter is sometimes staying too long in situations and projects and things and toxic environments and workplaces, whatever the situation, because you don't want to quit and you kind of ignore or you don't want to let go because you can't accept how things are. So giving yourself permission, I think, plays into self-compassion. Giving yourself permission to be like, you know what? That worked for me in my 20s and 30s. I did that. It was wonderful. I was really resonating with it. I was very happy. My heart felt good. I was joyful about it. But now it just doesn't feel the same. And maybe it's because, you've matured, you've evolved, whatever. Your favorite color could have changed, okay? Like my favorite color used to be red. And now I love green. I love everything about green. This is just one little example. So it's okay. It's your prerogative. It's your life. Give yourself permission to let go of something. Give yourself permission to go all in. This applies to imposter syndrome or procrastination due to perfectionism. How many of you procrastinate because you're perfectionist or you feel like you don't have all the credentials or the resources to start? I have wasted so much time due to my perfectionism. It has to be perfect. My perfect could vary to someone else's perfect, right? Varies from yours or mine. But these are ways we block ourselves and we don't give ourselves permission to be imperfect or permission to just go for it. So giving yourself permission to let go, to start over, to create something new, to go all in, it's a form of self-compassion as well. Because no one's going to tell you. Sometimes we put our own blocks to ourselves. We stop ourselves from being happy. And it's so subtle. It kind of sneaks up on you. You don't even realize it. The good thing about when it comes to creativity, at least, is that creativity and innovation come in with constraints. So perhaps you don't have all the credentials or all the resources, but we're in an age where there's so much knowledge sharing and information out there. You can start with what you have. Maybe what you might perceive as a constraint might push you to write that amazing book or find creative ways to make time for yourself in your schedule just to start, that new practice of yoga or that new side business or hustle you've always wanted to do. Or maybe you want to take on a new hobby and you're like, I'm too old for taking on hobbies. I have all these like practical things I have to do. I have to be serious all the time. Give yourself permission to cultivate joy in your life, whatever that looks like. That's also important because life is very long. And, that's something I'm working on. Self-compassion is allowing myself to have fun. Even though I have a never-ending to-do list, allowing myself to have fun, making time for fun in my life. So that's important. Well, when you lean into your discomfort, you let go of stuff that doesn't serve you anymore, you're creating from a genuine place of authenticity. The courage and power you feel from leaning into your discomfort and doing something new, that's what empowerment feels like. That's what it is. And it's a liberating feeling. So you gotta give yourself permission to look foolish sometimes. Be that like 40-year-old in a coding class, starting a second career at 42 because, that's where the world is going. No shame in that. Give yourself permission to go back into something you gave up years ago because you didn't think you were ready to pick up that book, pick up whatever that is for you. Shame-free, judgment-free, give yourself permission to let go of what doesn't serve you and to create from a more genuine, authentic place. Also, aside from empowerment, that is a result of leaning into your discomfort and giving yourself permission, disrupt the holding patterns in your life. And what is a holding pattern? It's basically insanity. It's living the same life and expecting different results. Same thing. And then, of course, you get the curveballs. Life comes in at you, and then you have to adapt and pivot and all that good stuff. But disrupt it. Where in your life are you just monotonously doing the same thing and feel the fatigue of it and the overwhelm, but you're not doing anything different to change that? So disrupt the holding pattern, break the block. When you're driving home, take another road. Change the radio station, or not radio station, but if you're like me, Spotify, put it on some other Spotify. Do something different to inspire something different. Because sometimes it's very easy to lose a sense of self and time doing the same thing. It's easy to get complacent. And a personal anecdote, I was in a holding pattern. A lot of it was because of fear, not being ready enough. A lot of it not knowing what the next steps are and just hoping things would change. But nothing really happens until you take action. So whatever that looks like for you, break it up into small steps, take action. Because I can assure you, no one is going to save you. And no one's going to love you more than you love yourself. And that's true. And that's not narcissistic. That's not arrogant. This is just to say that what you think is really important for you, no one outside of you is going to think that's more important for you. So all the effort you have to put into changing and disrupting the holding pattern is going to have to come from you. No one's going to do that work for you. And I mean, we know this, right? Like, I mean, as adults, we've seen people like that. Sometimes like it's hard to be around people who are train wrecks because you're just like, man, you're a good person, but boy, you're self-destructive. And I just don't feel like it's my place to tell you what you're doing wrong. Maybe life will teach you. That's a very extreme example. But, some of us at times in our lives lack self-awareness. So, present company included, we lack self-awareness. And I can tell you, no one is going to tell you. Everyone is in their own universe, their orbit, their system. Sad but true, you're responsible for yourself. And I'm going to give an exaggerated example. Perhaps you have a loved one or a friend or someone that that you're like, man, this person is great. They're amazing. But wow, they just keep on doing that. They keep on doing that. And they're just not any better. What do you do after a while? You stop giving advice. You stop being solution focused because they're not receptive to anything. And unfortunately, you have to step away and let life teach them, and whatever that is. And maybe that's been you. Maybe you had to learn the hard way, right? Maybe no one around you said it as bluntly, but then someone said it and you took offense. And so now life is going to teach you a tough lesson. And that's when you're going to get it. I don't know. But either way, point is that if you're in a holding pattern and you've noticed that you're not happy or something's not right, your body's not feeling right, your work is not thriving, you're not happy doing the things you were happier, it might be that you might need to change up some things and be receptive to change. And yeah, change takes a lot of effort and proper accountability. But once again, we're only responsible for ourselves, right? So perhaps you changing for yourself, you are leading by example. And that might empower and inspire someone else to do the same. Because we are a community and we are interconnected. And I know a lot of times when I see people go through amazing things and meet their business goal or, find love or lose the weight or hike that mountain, whatever, it's inspiring to me. I take a lot of inspiration and empowerment from that. So yeah, so you might be someone's inspiration one day, and that's a good thing, right? All right, so the first one was give yourself permission, right? So we're going to give ourselves permission by disrupting the holding pattern, by being empowered, doing something different. Second big tool for self-compassion in this uncertain time, stop picking the wound. Stop picking the wound and re-traumatizing yourself. Now, this is a tough one to talk about without getting too much into personal details, but perhaps you can relate. I can almost predict that anyone who listens to these episodes has had some kind of traumatic experience or heartbreak or crisis in their life, given where we are in this modern world at this current moment. It would be very Pollyanna of me not to think otherwise. But I just think we're all trying our best to stay above it and be helpful and cooperate and coexist peacefully with each other and within our systems. So stop picking the wound. So you went through something crazy. Maybe it was in your childhood. Maybe it was so painful that only few people in your life know about it. Maybe you went through a really tough relationship, health crisis. I always go back to these things, financial crisis, whatever that was. Maybe it was childhood bullying. Maybe it was adult bullying. I don't know. It was painful. And after that pain that assaulted your soul, your heart, it profoundly changed who you are. Okay. You're unrecognizable energetically, maybe even physically after that. You go back to old people, spaces and places and friends and connections, and they can't even recognize you as that person anymore because that thing, that trauma, whatever it was, it changed you forever. That old version of you does not exist. The pain is still there, but over time you learn to manage that pain and you healed from it. You accepted the pain and the lesson and made peace with it. It could be years, it could be days, it could be whatever. Figuratively, someone knocks on your door. This is someone you haven't heard from in a while. You don't want to open that door because you're like, do I have to talk about what happened? Do I owe that to anybody? I learned this from a teacher of mine, that your life is sacred. Your process is sacred. Start treating it like that. Not everybody is going to understand you, and not everybody's going to respect and value what you've gone through. There's ways about sharing if you want to as an advocate or raise awareness, but no one will hold your experience as sacred as you. One thing to address in that is, sometimes people are just nosy and intrusive. They might want to put you in a box. And what I mean by a box, we assign categories, right? Like we assign classifications. This is all in human nature. We do that. It's not the best thing to do, but we do it. People, myself included, unknowingly, without bad intention, can do that at times. And that's why we have to check ourselves. But the truth is, you don't have to pick the wound. You don't have to re-traumatize yourself. If you've gone through something, it's still there. It's going to be dormant. It's going to be in your cell memory. It's subdued, but it's still there. And just because someone that you don't know or someone who's just nosy asks questions doesn't mean you have to answer them. And not to go back to the first one, give yourself permission to exercise those boundaries. You don't owe anyone an explanation. And I know I'm being vague right now because this could be, you can use this as inspiration for anything that you went through. I know what I'm talking about in regards to me. And I do think sometimes when you're trying to heal and you're moving forward in life, it doesn't serve you to keep re-traumatizing and picking a wound. Because at some point you have to make peace with that, right? At some point you have to say, yes, that happened. It wasn't great. It hurt. It was awful. But I don't have to talk about this and relive this every day anymore, unless I'm here to take whatever I learned from it and it may help someone else. I can reframe it. I can use it as fuel to better my life. I can use it as context to know what not to do next time. I can be a more informed person, but I don't have to talk about it. And maybe you do. Maybe with the right people, it's okay to talk about it. But listen to your heart. Just because everybody, and I say everybody very loosely, and it's not everybody, whatever, just the annoying person that you haven't seen in a while, it's like, oh my God, what happened? That person. You don't have to share if you don't want to. You don't. You can share when you're ready too, right? I feel like when I read other people's stories about what they have gone through, their storytelling is a form of healing for them. Some people channel it through their films. They channel it through their art. Some people, take that and they open up organizations and nonprofits. Some become speakers. There's ways we all transmute our pain into wisdom and art. And those are great. So there's not one way to do it for you. But I will say that staying in a loop of just pain is also not good. At some point, we have to let go of that. And like I said, I'm not a therapist. I'm just someone on this planet with the podcast right now that's just sharing and hoping that you'll listen, reflect, and connect with this. Also, about not picking the wound and re-traumatizing yourself. There is this whole component of sometimes being so hyper independent and self-reliant and walled up because of what you've gone through that it can come across as you're too prideful, you don't need anyone's help, or you don't want to seem weak. But sometimes I've noticed, and this is something I'm currently working on, it's hard to let people in. What's the point? No one's going to understand. So there is moderation. And I would say I'm not a therapist, but I would say that you will know who your people are, who you can let in, who you can share with, who are safe spaces, right? And you'll know that. But if you don't feel that that person will have any understanding, maybe hold off on sharing that or re-traumatizing yourself. Or think about how you can channel that into something else. Perhaps your artwork, your writing, your business, your workout regimen. I don't know. That's going to be your next step. That's where you're going to put all your wisdom that you gleaned from what you went through. But you'll know when, and you'll know who your safe people are, and you'll learn to let those walls down eventually as well. But in the meantime, while you're healing, don't pick the wound. Don't pick the wound. There's no need to it. Don't share something sacred unless it's meant to be shared and you feel comfortable to share. Because not everyone is entitled to that, right? It's a privilege for all of us to be able to share our stories with people that we can trust. And it's a gift. And that's how I think when people come into our lives, whether as teachers, in relationships, as mentors, as guides, they are crossing our lives for a reason. We're supposed to learn from one another. At least that's what my spiritual belief is. I feel like I'm here to learn from everyone. Vice versa, I might be a catalyst in someone's life as well. Self-compassion in uncertain times. Give yourself permission. Stop picking the wounds. Now we're at the third one. Use your sensitivity chip. Use your sensitivity chip. Use it, extend grace, and be okay with being an asshole in someone's story. I think it's fair to say we all can make judgments and assumptions and take on stereotypes without realizing it, without realizing how wrong we are. But give yourself space to realize that you can course correct. Maybe you're wrong about something. Okay, now make it right. So what? You're wrong. Admit it, you're wrong. What's so awful about being wrong? Be better. Use your sensitivity chip. I mean, being graceful and extending grace to someone that might have misunderstood you. You know, you can go through life not even realizing that you've hurt someone because maybe you guys are on different operating manuals. Maybe one person's neurodivergent and they don't realize they have a resting bitch face and they don't have beef with anyone, but they always look angry. Or maybe, I'm just saying, I'm giving an example, exaggerated example. Perhaps you don't even realize you've offended someone, you know, or inadvertently hurt someone. But what if that was brought to your knowledge? Then what? Is it incumbent on you to make it right? Same goes for other people, right? So using your sensitivity chip, what that means to me when it comes to self-compassion is realizing that, you know, we're going to make mistakes. Just like you can make mistakes, so can the other person. So maybe you're wrong about someone and maybe someone's wrong about you. But if that relationship or person, you want to get to an understanding, course correct it. Ask them, hey, have I offended you? Is something wrong? Don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions about people's behavior unless you know for a fact what's going on. Because sometimes, you know, it's all like optics. We don't know anyone's full story. And I mean, we are wrong for that. People can be wrong about us. So yeah, extending grace to people. The other part of this is being okay with being the asshole in someone's story. And why do I say that? As crazy as that sounds, intent is something that no matter what your religion or spirituality, whether you call it God or Allah or the divine, intentions are not written on foreheads. They are known, maybe not to people, but to ones that matter. So you're walking through life and taking action with intention. And sometimes our actions don't line up and they look wonky on the outside and people can pass judgment. Maybe sometimes people don't have all the information. They pass judgment. Give grace. Give grace. So maybe you are the asshole in someone's story and there hasn't been a chance to clear it up. Or there's no need to clear it up. Let it be. Let it be. Who cares? What does it matter? This crazy time that we're living in with so much suffering. And I say that because, you know, beyond our own world, there's all of this that's going on. We're all existing and coexisting amongst all this. How much are you really going to drain your life force worrying about what people think about you if you knew your heart was in the right place? And if you personally haven't made the effort to make it right, and perhaps those people haven't. And this goes into relationships, families, friendships, partnerships, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Like I said, sometimes you can be an asshole in someone's story because they need you to be the asshole in their story. It's not fun, right? You're like, hey, how did this happen? But maybe in time, that will change. Maybe that person will heal from whatever they've kind of made you their scapegoat for, or their punching bag for, or whatever. And you'll realize that it's okay. It's not about you. It's about them. And they're still seeking understanding for their lives. And you just happen to play a part in their story. And you have to be okay with it. Wish them well. Hope they have understanding. And vice versa. Give that grace to yourself, which goes back to self-compassion. And also extend that to others. You know, You don't have to like everybody, and not everybody has to like you, but you don't have to be an asshole in life. Be an asshole who cares. You can be an asshole in their story, but not in action. So yeah, so what I think a lot about the stuff that we drain our energy on is that, like, let it go. Who cares? Use your energy where it matters. I'm going to speak on a personal experience of like just my culture. And this doesn't apply to everyone from my culture, but this is my experience. So hopefully I'm not offending anyone. It's not my intent to offend anyone. This is just me sharing. But I know for myself, as a daughter of first generation South Asian Muslim Americans, I realized there was a lot of like shame-based cultures where if you didn't fit into a certain mold or a certain income bracket, and I'm exaggerating to illustrate, and people couldn't like place you somewhere. If you're not a follower and if you're not a leader and you're an outlier, you're odd. And it changed your whole trajectory in life. It does. And people and all these like social hierarchies and I'm still learning from other friends, like if this applies across other communities as well. But in my experience, when people don't understand people and you don't fit the mold, it's just easy to like fill in the gaps with your own assumptions, which, unfortunately, that could be anything. It may look odd to people because they don't understand it. So a lot of that goes into like being okay with being like misperceived and letting people misperceive you or quote be the asshole in someone's story because they don't really know your whole story. And that could go for you, whether or not you're South Asian, doesn't matter, or you're a child of an immigrant, first generation. It could be, I don't know, you might be that eccentric odd one in your family, you might be the one artist out of like a whole family of doctors, engineers, and finance people. I don't know. Whatever the case is, you don't fit in, you don't understand, people don't understand you, and somehow it just creates all this discord. But don't feed into that, because I think a lot of what I saw, at least in my experience in my little community, all that social hierarchy stuff and a lot of the elitism, I never really bought into it even as a child. It was just like, to me, it felt like a double standard. So as an adult, I really don't care. And I always say, like, how and where you end up in life, sometimes a lot of it is just circumstances as well. So we shouldn't hold those strict rules. Like I said, my experience is only my experience. I don't speak on the behalf of my South Asian community ever. And I don't speak for all Muslim American first generation kids either. But from my experience, all that social hierarchy stuff, a lot of that framing that we did, for some people, it was unfair and personally didn't really resonate with me. And as an adult, I decided, I'm opting out of these like social hierarchy / games, because to me, we're all human and stuff can happen anytime, right? And I think that might be specific to immigrant culture too. I don't know. But since we're reflecting and connecting, maybe you can think about that. Maybe you may disagree with me, and that's okay too. Maybe you kind of get what I'm saying, and you can email me. I don't know. Be a guest. Share your experience with me. But one of the things that it did do for me is that it fostered a sensitivity chip. So because I guess I came from a working middle class immigrant family, I saw how a lot of people were treated differently within my community, and it gave me a sensitivity chip where I'm not impressed by anything but kindness. I refuse to play into those games. It doesn't appeal to me because I know what it was like growing up and not feeling like I was accepted in all the different circles or the way anything was. I mean, without going into detail, it made me a more sensitive person. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I really don't think it's a bad thing, because usually there's this proverb, African proverb, that the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. And when I came across that, and maybe it was like on a Pinterest board or something, I was like, yes, that's true. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. So, you know, maybe it wasn't for you. It wasn't an immigrant experience for you. It wasn't a first generation immigrant experience for you. Maybe it was a different experience for you. You know, if you're listening to this right now, maybe it was in school. Maybe it was bullying based on like what you look like, what you sound like, where you lived, your socioeconomic. Maybe it was completely different because maybe you had a one parent household, or maybe you weren't close, or you were estranged with somebody. I don't know. I'm just throwing out some different scenarios. And instead of making you a mean person, it made you a sensitive person, because you remember what it feels like to be cut by words and stupid conformist rules that don't make a lot of sense, or just like a lot of showboating and a lot of like posturing for society acceptance. And as an adult, you're like, you can see that. And it's funny, like as an adult now, I do not care at all. And I think I wish I had that level of 0 F's given when I was a kid, but I didn't. But as an adult, I'm like, no, I only respect kindness, and I don't really care about anything else, because everything else can be taken from you in a second. All the stuff that we think is valuable that puts us in like these like little hierarchies, they're not tangible to me, at least, right? I personally have taken away and decentered that from my relationships. It's not important. And I think it's made my life a lot easier. And being that sensitive came from my experiences. So maybe something in your life now gives you a greater sensitivity. Maybe you can use that and advocate against it, or shed light on it and illuminate it. Use your sensitivity, Chip. Extend grace, and be okay with being the asshole in someone's story. Just don't be an asshole. Just be that in quotes in someone's story. Moving on to the fourth topic in the episode of self-compassion in uncertain times is trauma timeline. Trauma timeline. What is a trauma timeline, you ask? Well, recently I came across this trauma timeline topic actually in another film event, and then I researched it. And it was actually a film event that my producer also produced as well. And it was the Black Maternal Health, which is a great project that we're working on, and it's going to be awesome. But one of the practitioners, holistic practitioners, talked about a trauma timeline. And I was like, that is interesting. I've never heard that before. I've learned about timelines, but not a trauma timeline. What is that? So I took it upon myself to, do a little internet research and a little deep dive, because, I want to know, as someone with trauma and healing from it and generational trauma, I wanted to understand that. So recently I had an opportunity to discuss with my mother generations of the women in her family and what they had undergone that was profoundly traumatic. And I started taking notes. I recorded this. And I did this more for understanding of like why my family is the way it is, why I am, and just getting a better read on the person I am. And I think for me, at the age of over 40, that's all I'm going to say, not having children, I'm kind of like at this place in my life, well, what is my legacy? But at least what is my origin? And now I'm very invested in learning about the women in my family, on both sides of my family, but especially my mom's, because my mom's side of the family is a family I really grew up with, and I learned the most and spent the most time with. And I have to say, the women in my family are all incredibly strong-willed and smart, strong-willed and smart women. And I was like, where do we get that from? And lo and behold, my mom just kind of went all the way back to her great-grandmother. And I'm just like listening to this, and oh my God, tears were coming down my eyes, because my grandmother was widowed at 24, never remarried. My great-grandmother was a widow. My mom's sister passed away as a teen. But every generation had like a widow, a single woman who had a health crisis and died early. And it was crazy to me, like how women became this strong. And it was because they had to. They had to be this strong, but they endured many traumas. And of course, in the South Asian community, there was all the partition, going from India to Pakistan in 1947. And a lot of stuff happened for my community. And then the second thing is like adjusting to America and coming to America. But I sat down and I kind of like, did the family tree on my mom's side, the family, and asked about everybody. Like, tell me about my great-grandmother. Tell me about my grandmother, who I, only knew briefly until I was like 8 years old and she passed away. You guys grew up in a community home, and a home with like widows and orphans. And what was that like? And what was it like growing up without a father? Like my grandfather died in the War of 47. And, my mom and her siblings, her younger siblings, didn't really have a father growing up. And they all kind of had to figure it out. And my grandmother was a widow at 24. Can you imagine? Like there's some women who've never been married and she never remarried. And there were so many women in my mom's family that didn't remarry at very young ages. And I was just like, that is so sad. And then there were some that just kind of stayed in really unfortunate situations because they didn't have a way to get out of it. And I started seeing a pattern. And I'm not going to go on to say what the pattern was, but it informed me on a deeper level to who I am, even at my age as a woman who's also, in a weird place in her life and trying to figure out, well, I wasn't widowed. But yeah, I don't know what's up ahead and I don't have kids. And I'm being very vulnerable right now, but the truth is, like, a lot of us can understand that. But where do we get these patterns to be strong? Like, and I had to ask that because a lot of the women in my family are incredibly strong. But like, what does that mean? Does that mean we're not like, we're unfeeling? Does that mean that we're not sensitive? Does that mean we're not soft? Does that mean that we don't cry and we don't want to be taken care of? No, that's not what it means, but that's what it looks like sometimes. So what I would say to you, the listener, whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't matter, kind of research your origins. Like, sit down with some of your elders if you hadn't had a chance and put together a timeline. Like, what did your families go through? And then how do they like bounce back from that? And how do they build that resilience and those traits? How do they emerge for you? For me, like I said, at least on my mom's side of the family, I think we are an incredibly strong group of really wonderful women. And I say that because my female cousins are brilliant women. Brilliant. My sister, they're just strong women, but they're just as gentle with the big heart. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I just wanted to take that moment and celebrate that because you wouldn't know. Right. But I think it comes from our history. And I think a lot of like asking your family, your elders, and sitting down with them and learning how they are and why they are the way they are. It also gives you a better, it gives you a better understanding of how you are. That could be, patterns of behavior. If there's any dysfunctional patterns or systems within your family, it does better inform your own habits and health issues. And also for me, because I know I'm imperfect. And I know that I think all of us are imperfect to some degree, right? It helps me see my parents as children when I connected with them like that. Because, they were little kids too, right? And they were looking for guidance too. And their parents did the best they could. Just like my parents did the best they could with me. And then, here I am doing the best I can with my cats. So it was illuminating. Our origin stories, our history, it's important to know that, to understand ourselves, and to also celebrate the wins in our family. Like, wow, they came back from that. They came back from war. They came back from losing everything. they came back from this. Like, that's amazing. It's empowering. But also because our trauma and whatever little trauma, big trauma, our experiences, our past, that goes into our little toolbox, and we meet other people with their own stuff. And as reflectors, we reflect back to each other. Also knowing that not everybody on this planet has both parents or even healthy parents. And I know we don't like to talk about that stuff out loud, but it is a blessing if you have amazing parents. At the same time, that's also subjective, right? Like, I don't know what you would consider amazing or not, but there are also people who don't have their parents around or don't know their parents. And we're all in this mixture on this planet going through life. And then we get in contact with each other, not knowing each other's origin stories or the traumas or our histories or how we grew up. And then we meet each other. So I don't know. For me, it was very important for self-compassion is to understand where you came from and to also extend that to your family and to be like, okay, I get why my mom is like that, or I get why my father is like this. I get it because of this. And it's just nice. It's nice to have that understanding. And also it informs you to realize, okay, am I going to break a pattern? Am I going to be better? Am I going to come in and take personal responsibility and do the work on myself so I don't have to be, quote, whatever it is. I'm just using as an example, whether there's codependency, addiction, whether it's just like staying in uncomfortable situations or taking on too much that you know is not right. Whatever that is for you. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. Please don't take that kind of advice from me. This is just for reflection for you. But whatever that is for you, maybe perhaps you're going to disrupt a pattern and be a better version of yourself, or you're going to improve upon the previous generation. Maybe you're going to take a heartache or heartbreak that your parents endured and make sure you're not going to repeat that for your children. And if you don't have kids, maybe you're just going to show up in a different version of yourself, a better version, and break that pattern. It was very eye-opening for me. The other part of this was, the trauma timeline is having that data set for ourselves. I mean, we all know that the world is going to data in a weird way, like our unconscious patterns, all that. It's put together a data set for yourself. I did this the other day. I put my breakups, my setbacks, my hurdles. I just made a list and I put a year next to it. I put like a bullet point under like how much time did I spend healing from that, recovering from it, how I showed up different, where I edited my life, where I had to make new changes. And I kind of now looking back, I'm like, man, my 30s were crazy. And my 40s is when I started like, oh, wow, I have to change things. And I think it's part of realizing that we're not going to live forever, but life is still long, So now we have to be in alignment and be okay with the life we're living. So losing parts of yourself, what does that mean? Losing parts could mean losing time. Losing parts could be profoundly, it could be like, if you experience any kind of trauma or setback. But how do you reclaim that? Doing like a little assessment, making a little data set for yourself, and keep it to yourself. You don't have to share it with anyone. That's the beautiful thing. This is for you. Look at it and be like, wow, I really did not pay attention to myself in my 30s. Or, wow, I was wiling out and totally lost and not seeking purpose in my 20s. I don't know, whatever that is for you. Be honest and then be like, okay, this is where I'm at now. And then also put your wins, right? Like, how did you make that comeback? How did you recover from that? What worked? Where did you feel inclined to edit your life and to do something different? Create a new version for yourself. Start all over again. The beautiful thing about life is that as long as you're breathing, you can make better choices for yourself. You really can. So that for me was trauma timeline and making a data set for you. It's a lot more illuminating than I thought it would be. And it has now profoundly changed the way I see my parents going forward. And I think that's a good thing. So maybe you could do that too. And maybe you'll learn something from it. Maybe you'll learn some family stories that will, I don't know, inspire you or educate you or illuminate you. So yeah, get into that. I also like to go through old family photos, and while my parents are alive, kind of ask them like, who is everybody? I mean, for the family members no longer with us. So I don't know. It's important. It's important. I want to know. And I have so much more to learn myself. So. Okay. We are now coming to a close. The final little quick segment is going to be tools for self-compassion. So just to recap, we had give yourself permission, stop picking the wounds, use your sensitivity chip, make a trauma timeline, and now what are some tools for self-compassion? This is, of course, very, very basic list. This is stuff that I do, but of course, I'm sure I'm leaving a million things out. So you get the drift. I'm just throwing these out here in case this is something, just as a reminder that maybe you need to do this, or maybe you need to do more of this. I don't know. But this works for me. Letter writing and journaling. Oh my gosh. Letter writing and journaling. You need a container for your unprocessed emotions and those difficult things. Things that you can't say out loud, things maybe you're not ready to share. Maybe you'll never share, but you have to get it out. Writing that letter to that person who bullied you in 8th grade. Writing and letter for closure, like for unanswered questions, because this is a really good one, because sometimes you don't get closure in life at all. And you have to be okay with that. Sometimes you can ask for closure and you won't get it either, because maybe you're not supposed to get it. And maybe you're supposed to be okay with not knowing. And I'm going to add one more thing to this. I have found in my life that when you let go of wanting closure, you get closure. And not because you don't get closure, you get it when you're ready to receive it and because you're strong enough to process it. And sometimes, and this is from a spiritual place, my thinking, you may not be getting the closure and answers because maybe you're not ready for them. Even though you want it, you're not ready to receive that. And maybe for your own protection, it's better that you not know for now, Because I struggled with that for a while. I did not have answers or explanations, and I'm someone who's very inquisitive, and I must know so I don't do this again, or I don't go through this again. And I just had to let it go. But you know where I let it go? In my journal, in a letter. And it was good. And I still journal. Like when there's times where I feel overwhelmed with journaling, is a really nice container to just let it out, let out all those feelings that you feel conflicted about. Or even sometimes just like asking yourself questions and then waiting a while, letting it go, and then receiving an answer later. It's nice. It's freeing. The second thing that's a really good tool is an emotional release, a somatic release through yoga and movement. I really love yin yoga for that. But I think, like I said, I'm not a yoga teacher and I'm not a fitness trainer by any means, but our body does carry emotions. And sometimes it's funny, like sometimes if you lift weights and you're feeling internally weak, lifting weights, and then all of a sudden over a while of lifting weights, you feel stronger and more confident. It's kind of like that, right? So I know, at least in yin yoga, that, certain poses, especially like hip openers, our sacral chakra and our solar plexus, where we carry a lot of like really intense emotions and trapped emotions live. When you do certain poses, it does make you cry. And you're like, why am I crying? Or, if you've ever done like yoga plus journaling, which is like you do a pose, you hold the pose with, a yoga practitioner, and then, or even a guided one, I guess you can find one online. And then you sit down with your thoughts, you write down what comes up for you. and you realize like, man, I've been holding this for a while. I really didn't forgive that person. I thought I did, but boy, I'm still angry. Because, your body keeps score and your body does carry trapped emotions. So if you're going to be self-compassionate, start doing some of that. That can be a little alarming. You might be really surprised and shocked how much crying that you haven't allowed yourself to cry. Like you just need to get rid of it. I don't know. It's helpful for me, so I'm sharing that. The other thing is self-love. Like, what do you love about yourself? I mean, the world is a very critical place, and our inner critics, if you're someone who's a perfectionist or who deals with that, or grew up in a very critical home, or whatever your inner dialogue is, inner monologue is, it's easy to critique yourself, but what do you love about yourself? I mean, really, give yourself that space and ask yourself, what do you love about yourself? And I'm going to ask you right now, what do you love about yourself? What can you name me 3 things that make you amazing, that make you lovable? What do you love about yourself? Think about it. Are you a generous person? Do you have a beautiful smile? Are you a forgiving person? Are you a helpful person? I don't know. What do you love about yourself? You don't give up. You always find a way out. You always figure it out. You're self-reliant. I don't know. What do you love about yourself? You let shit go. You don't make it always about you. I don't know. What is it that you love about yourself? Think about it and celebrate that. Because, maybe you don't have anyone in your life to tell you they love you. Hate to say it, but you love you. So what do you love about yourself? Start reminding yourself that you're worthy of loving and just celebrate you. And that's something I also, believe it or not, have started doing more of it. It sounds really hippy dippy, but it works. It works. It works. Especially if you hated yourself or you were unhappy with it. If you have a very perfectionist or you're just like a tough, critical person in yourself, you don't ever feel like you're doing enough. It's hard to sit there and say, what do you love about yourself? You don't realize it, but it creeps up on you, because if you don't love you, guess what? It's going to be hard for people to love you. I know that sounds awful, and you're going to have like really awful people in your life who are going to really take advantage of the fact that you don't know how amazing you are. And that has something to do with arrogance, narcissism. I know we throw those words around, but self-love is just a healthy self-love. It's treating yourself with kindness. It's not narcissistic. It's just being kind with yourself. So yeah, be kind with yourself. The other thing is connecting with nature, hugging trees and sunlight. It's a no-brainer. It's good for mental health. Hugging trees and sunlight. That's all I'm going to say. Connect with nature. You realize how small you are and how vast we are as a world, as a community on this planet when we're in nature. It's important. And I know myself, I struggle with like being in the office a lot. As much as I love nature, I need to spend more time in nature. I really need to just do that. And that's my reminder. And I always feel better. When I'm in nature. I just have to force myself to go out there and not be such a workaholic at times. The other one, a tool for self-compassion, is energy accounting. Energy accounting, what is that? Yeah, just remove the time sucks, the drains, the energy vampires, the drama queens, the problematic type of people that, or the things that don't serve you, things you don't like doing, but you're doing it, is draining you. Get rid of it. Get rid of like stuff that doesn't add value to your life in the big scheme of things, right? Like, and I think that goes into like being really honest with yourself and being like accounting for your energy. Like, where do you show up? How you show up? How long you show up for? And if you need some space or time to yourself, maybe you don't have to make the 20 phone calls on a Sunday. Maybe Sunday you just need a day of like, I don't know, meditating, praying, or just spending a day at a botanical garden just by yourself. Maybe that's what you need to restore your energy for the week ahead. It's okay. I realize that when you start doing that, it's going to upset some people, but the people who care, who know you, it's not going to matter to them. They're going to understand it. So accounting for your energy is important, because where you use your energy, where you put your energy, is where you're going to thrive and grow. So if you waste your energy in the wrong places, with the wrong people, with the wrong things, the wrong projects, or whatever, the wrong job, I don't know, whatever it is for you, it's going to take away from the things that matter. So maybe you should be spending more time with your family. Maybe you should be spending more time in rest and recovery. Maybe you should be spending more time building your passion project or building that side hustle or building that business. But because with improper energy accounting, you don't have the energy to show up maybe for your family. You don't have the energy to show up in that amazing team meeting. You don't have the energy to show up for your passion project or your side hustle or your workouts or your prayer practice, whatever it is for you, for your art. Account for your energy and lead by example. When you start doing that, the people that matter, the people who understand you, who vibe with you, they're not going to be upset. They're going to do the same thing. The second to last one is your spiritual practice. And I say spiritual practice because, of course, we all have different faiths and some people don't subscribe to a singular faith. I personally do. So for me, as a Muslim American, I do pray, and prayer is literally my lifeline. It keeps me centered. Praying and just that space, I look forward to it. And the days that I miss a prayer or I don't do it, I feel the effects of it. And for someone like myself who needs a lot of balance in my life, and I need to feel centered and to have the energy that I need to have to do what I do, having those conversations in prayer, seeking guidance, pouring myself into a spiritual practice, it connects me and it reminds me that all this will pass. This moment, if you're going through a tough time, will pass. There is something else out there for me. And you may not believe that. That's fine. So maybe for you, it looks like something else. Maybe for you, it is a yoga class. Maybe for you, it's just like spending time outdoors. I don't know. For me, spiritual practice has got me through the toughest times in my life, has been my lifeline, and reminded me that I am just a very, very small piece of the puzzle in this greater plan of the universe. And I'm just here to do my part as a student. You can get through anything. Yeah, I'm very blessed for that. And I encourage people, don't let the spiritual word deter you, because we're not just here to consume and die. Not to be blunt, but to be blunt. We're all here for a lot more than that. We're not just here to buy stuff and die. We're not here just to consume stuff and die. We are so much more than that. And for me, at least in my spiritual practice, that is what it's reminded me, that we are here for a greater purpose. And it's not just this existence on earth. It's beyond that. And what we do with what we are given here gives me a more understanding of why things happen and how they happen. For me, at least, it gives me that framework. Surround yourself with things and spaces that resonate with you. Stay open and receptive, and be kind to yourself. That's the last one for tools for self-compassion. 3 books that I feel like might be good to check out as a suggestion on self-compassion. The first one, The Faithful Gardener by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She's an amazing author of the book A Woman Who Runs with Wolves, another great book, one of my favorites. The second book I recommend is Heartwork, The Path of Self-Compassion by Dr. Rajul Weininger. And the third book for my recommendation for today's episode is Walking the Tiger, Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. That one is an intro into understanding trauma. So The Faithful Gardener, Heartwork, This Path of Self-Compassion, and Walking the Tiger, Healing Trauma. So hopefully you'll check those books out and, glean something from it. Listen, reflect, connect. Some reflection points for you before I leave today. Where in your life did you feel like you had no support? And what kind of support did you need? How would you be that support to yourself or to someone else? Where in your life have you been misunderstood? When in your life did you misunderstand someone else? Why? or what in your life did you go against your heart, realizing that even in the end, it would still hurt? Was it worth it? Why? Why not? Final question. Where in your life did you not go all in? Not give your 100%? Why? Thank you for joining me today. I'm Farida. This is The Slow Dive. Let's make an impact one episode at a time.